Lucy, welcome to Women Finding Clarity.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Could I be more excited to have you here? Right? Could I be more excited? I am super excited to have you here. For anyone who doesn't know Lucy, we met during a business coaching program, and she was so gracious to let me stay with her and her family during a retreat that we went to in California. And just to see her, like, I love Lucy as a human, as a soul, all of the things. And then to see her family unit and be allowed to intermingle energies in the energy of her family was just, it was such a gift. It was such a blessing. Like, I know that that was very special, and I felt very honored to be there.
Wow, you know that you've officially been adopted into our clan. So my children are just enamored and they adore you.
It's because I brought them chocolate dessert. That's why.
It could be,
I
but
mean, that's helpful. Seriously, I come down in the morning. Lucy's getting ready for the day's event. Her husband is in the kitchen cooking breakfast for everyone. He offered to cook breakfast for me. Like, you guys are just such a beautiful little, you're just a beautiful little unit. Yeah. So Lucy is a courage cartographer, like I said. And let's talk about that, Lucy. Like, what is it and how did you get here? Because it's nothing I've ever heard before in my life.
well, essentially, it's a fun way of saying I'm a courage researcher. And I started out studying women's courage in particular before I expanded out into, really looking at human courage. And how I got here, I don't know. I guess the way everybody gets to wherever they're going, and maybe not everybody takes, the back roads, but I think in my life, I usually take the back roads. I'm not going anywhere in one straight line. So for me, it's been so many different experiences throughout my whole life. And I think really it started when I was a kid. I had a tendency to be pretty audacious. Nothing really felt like I couldn't try it. Didn't mean I wasn't, nervous about it or that, but I was definitely the kid raising their hand to do things, speak up or try new things or whatever it was, really take a stand for people or a cause. And my parents used to say that I was their wild child. And for a long time, I was like, I don't think that's a very nice thing. Like, I don't think they mean that way. But what I've come to learn is they were calling my courage wildness because my courage was also a little untamed. So I have come to find that courage is best served with a side of self-awareness, social awareness, emotional intelligence, and that really roots me. So
I
it's
love hearing that story about how you were as a kid and how your parents saw you. And, anytime when I hear about all the things that you've done, absolutely courageous, but your energy is just so easygoing, just flows so gently. You're such a gentle human being. And so to think about you being like the wild child, I just don't compute that.
well, I think it's meant different than the way a lot of kids are described maybe as
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
even they told me one time that I had like taken in this stray dog. We called her Alf. I'll never forget. It was like a, I don't know, like a rough collie or something. And I fell in love with her and I decided she was mine. I was probably about 9 years old. And I don't really remember this very well, other than I remember the feeling I had about it. but she followed us to school one day, and the dog catcher was going to take her, and I wasn't about to have that. And so, as you know, this 9-year-old child just marched up to him to let him know that she was a living creature and she didn't deserve to be locked up. And I was there to take a stand for her, and just gave him, the what for.
You
And
came in the business.
of course, they called my parents. So it was those things, that they were really talking about. And I've just come to find throughout my life that that has both served me very well and gotten me into trouble. And so really trying to figure out, like, how do we navigate courage, and why should we choose it? And how is it in service to us? And what happens when we don't choose it? So that's really, it's all of those things and so many more stories like that. As I grew into a woman and a professional, I've done all kinds of things in my professional life, and a certified athletic trainer for Olympic and collegiate sports. And then I moved on to being an emergency nurse. And then I went into leadership in nursing. And that led me to, wow, we really need in this world as leaders to lead from a place of courage, until we have created organizations that lead from a place of creating psychological safety for everyone, where we can all show up and just live in brave spaces, um, where kind of boldness is just in the air. But until then, we need to learn how to lead with courage. And I say until then because the hope is that we need courage in times when safety doesn't exist for us, and we have to choose what's right. So where we don't have, where we see risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure, that's the places where courage shows up. And so until we have organizations that can create that for us, and always there's going to be times where they can't, we need a heck of a lot more courageous leaders in the world. And I wanted to learn more about how do we help people do that. So that's how I became a courage cartographer. So I map it out. I've mapped it out. And
I
now
love it.
I'm teaching people how to do that.
It's amazing. And I've been to some of your events. They're so powerful, and you lead with your heart, and you are courageous, and you're just your comfortable self. And for me, I feel like that would be the goal. Be courageous to just be comfortable.
Yes. And I feel like courage, it takes so much courage to be ourselves in a world that constantly wants you to be anything other than yourself. And learning how to become our whole selves is a huge part of the path to courage.
Yeah, because how do you know what takes courage and what doesn't if you're not even sure who you are as a person? And, you know, being able to, the way the world is today, the way society is today, we're frequently in cancel culture. We're frequently, someone's always offended about something. And yeah, a lot of it is justified, some of it's not. And have you noticed, because what's coming up for me is there a lack of courage in speaking your truth for being afraid of being canceled, of being called out?
Absolutely. I was just thinking about this yesterday. I have a friend who is a CEO of quite a large company. And we were just kind of jamming on courage. And he was just sharing, one of the most difficult things that he has seen in the last few years has been that you will see somebody take a stand for what is right, as maybe another business owner or someone in your company, and they just get destroyed for doing that. And so if you then, as the CEO of your company, are going to back them, you're now saying, I'm stepping into the firefight with you, right? That and how do you decide then, is that the right thing to do? Or should I, am I, responsible for protecting my company? And I think that's where we're always in this place with courage of, I define courage based on what was defined prior to me. So all of the researchers who had come before me, but also all of the participants in my studies helped really clarify exactly what courage is. And so I define it as deliberately choosing what is right in the face of risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. And what I found is the opposite of courage isn't cowardice. Cowardice, that's a whole nother shame-based language that we use to get people to do things they wouldn't normally do. But instead, the opposite of courage is self-protection. And there's a time for self-protection. And self-protection also shows up in ways like protecting our families, right? Because we're also protecting, I mean, if anything happens to our families, that hurts terribly, and we're not there.
Absolutely.
And so we want to really protect ourselves. And so it's not about a matter of, well, yes, they absolutely should be in self-protection and protecting their company, or they absolutely should be encouraged. The thing about courage is it is a very personal experience. And the problem becomes if we are chronically setting in self-protection every time, every choice that's coming forward. In that place, we're in trouble. The cost of that is way higher than what you're risking when you choose courage.
And sometimes the courage is being courageous enough to say, I was wrong,
Oh, yes. Oh,
because
my.
that's huge.
I think saying I was wrong or I need help or
Yes.
sorry are some of the biggest places that we see courage, but we don't think about them as even maybe being, courageous.
But they are.
Oh, yes, they are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, as you're talking about leaders in the workplace and their employees, like, who do you back? Do you stand and protect your company, or do you back your employee? And I feel like there has to be a middle ground where you're still standing in the integrity of the company, but part of your role as a leader is to protect your employee.
Because without employees, you have no company.
That's
For,
it.
I mean, for anyone who has more than two or who has two employees or more, lose those people and you will quickly find that you have no company when you have no employees to be there to drive the mission forward. But I do think that there is a middle ground. And honestly, and I don't even know if I think it's a middle ground, but I think that there is a clear path. And that clear path comes down to, really one of the pillars of courage, or I'm not 100% sure even how I talk about those things yet. I would call them pillars right now, but I'm not sure that that's the best way to describe them yet. But one of them is um, belonging to ourselves. And inside of belonging to ourselves lives self-acceptance, self-compassion, self-love, worthiness, owning our voice, and values clarity. And I think it's in that place. The path is known to us when we are really clear about what is non-negotiable, what we stand for, what it matters most to us. And companies have values for a reason. I think, unfortunately, a lot of companies create values because they feel like it's what they're supposed to do, as opposed to really truly understanding that those values are your guide. They're your compass for how you now make decisions. And when you're clear about that, those decisions about how to best support that employee and your company become very, very clear.
Mm, so beautifully said. You know, one of the things that a coach likes to say, and one of the things that I feel like I hear the most often is, who do you want to be and how do you want to show up? And when you're leading from a place of self awareness and love and compassion and empathy and all those things, you are showing up how you want to show up. And it doesn't mean sometimes you don't have to be tough, because that can take a lot of courage too. For me, I do not like confrontation. And so it takes a lot of courage for me to summon that place inside of me where, I have to confront someone, or I need to confront someone. I'll do it, and I'll do it respectfully in most instances, but I also I don't like it.
Yes, of course. And when you think back to courage, right, you think of what is it that you're facing that makes courage feel so uncomfortable. It's risky. It feels risky. Whether it is or not doesn't really matter. Whether it's perception or true risk, it feels risky. It feels uncertain because you don't know what that response is going to be, right? And it feels emotionally exposing. For a while in my research, I was pulling away the word emotional exposure and just putting exposure, thinking like, well, it could be physical exposure, it could be all these things. But when I dug deeper, what I really found is that without the emotions attached, the ones that feel most uncomfortable to us, the exposure doesn't actually exist for us. We're we're willing to move through things if it doesn't feel uncomfortable. And so that emotional exposure is really important because those are the places where we're like, ooh, right? And that's why people always say, oh, well, courage is not a lack of fear, but it's being afraid and doing it anyway. And I'll tell you that the fact of the matter is fear does not have to be present for courage to exist. Sometimes it's apathy, like, oh, I know what I need to do, but the fact of the matter is I don't really want to. I don't want to. I don't feel like I have the energy for that right now, right? You can be really,
Right?
yeah. Or
Yeah.
it's contempt, like, I know the right thing to do in this situation, but I am so disgusted with that behavior, with that whatever it is, that I don't even want to think about it. And so it doesn't always have to be fear. Fear is just the one that gets our attention the most or the quickest because it feels really uncomfortable.
Right. And that is where we grow and expand the most, is when we can move through those feelings. And so facing that fear and allowing yourself to be comfortable, or not to be comfortable, allowing yourself to feel the feelings of
Mhm.
moving through that fear. I mean, that really takes a lot of courage, instead of just saying, no, no, I'm not going to even look at it. Right. Saying, okay, I'm going to be willing to sit in this and feel all the feels and go through it and take my lumps and come out on the other side. Not only is that so courageous and it encourages growth, but think about how proud you're going to feel of yourself on the other side of that.
Yes, so much. And I think this is where learning to cultivate courage, this is where it happens. It's in these places. We have to be aware of them. And so one of the things like I'll do in my 6-month program is we look for these opportunities. We intentionally look for them. And And you don't just have to do this in business, right? This is everyday life. You take yourself wherever you are. So, an example, we did this yesterday, me and my girls. We had gone to, uh, we were looking for furniture. Sounds like,
Oh, that makes me tired.
but we found like the one. We, all three of us were like, this is heaven. This is wonderful. And my husband, who had said, I trust whatever you decide. So
Good
great.
man. Good man.
So we were all three just in love. It was wonderful. And we said yes. The guy was writing the ticket up. Everything was going beautifully. And then this moment came where we found out that someone had just bought it and the system hadn't updated, and there was only one. And we were so sad. Now, that might sound like a silly thing to be sad about, and we even kind of giggled about that a little bit, but yet we were so disappointed that we all walked out kind of with our shoulders slumped forward and feeling sad. And we sat in the car for a minute, and my 11-year-old says, well, this feels awful. I was so excited because we've been looking for months now. I was so excited. Maybe we should just go get ice cream.
Yes.
Whoa. I
That's the answer.
love some ice cream. I know. I wanted to say yes, that's the answer. Instead, what I said was, let's try to sit and just explore. What if we just set our emotions up here on the dashboard and we just notice them and try to figure out what is it that they're telling us? What are they trying to say? Because I agree with you. We could go get some ice cream and that would feel really good. And we would just eat those emotions right up, but we wouldn't learn anything. And I said, this is such a great place to explore because we knew nothing bad was going to happen to us. There was no harm to come from just sitting in what I call the suck of it. Sitting.
Love that. Sit in the suck.
Right.
That takes courage.
But when you can do that in those little places like that, where you know that there's no harm to really truly be had, you're going to be okay. It's all of those places where we build our muscles. We really build, it's kind of like if you want to go on a long journey, but you just start with walking down the path for a half of a mile and just start to build the muscles. And I think every time we know where those moments are, that's the whole idea behind learning how to navigate and how to cultivate courage, is so you know how to build your muscles. It's just learning a set of tools so that we're clear, because there will come a day where you'll need to be able to walk the long path, to walk the long journey, to really call upon all of your courage in some big ways. And so having some skills and tools and knowing what to do early on